Can I brag for a minute? These are eggs from our chickens. See how yellow they are? Really orange. It's the same color, right? Hi everyone, I'm Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I have a recipe that I actually can't believe it's taken me this long to show you on Dessert Person. It's in What's for Dessert. It is a molten chocolate cake, and I actually feel like I have a secret to share with you guys because it's actually so easy to make. Okay, look, if you have been in like any restaurant in America in the last 10 years, you've probably seen on the dessert menu a molten chocolate cake. This is, at this point, ubiquitous, and it really started as a signature dessert of the chef Jean-Georges, based in New York City, and it's really just kind of like grown and become kind of a standard almost on a lot of dessert menus. Like I think Domino's pizza has a molten chocolate cake. I've never tried the Domino's one. I have had the Jean-Georges one, which is excellent. So this is definitely a chocolate lover's recipe, but the point is it feels like a really fancy like fine dining dessert, but it's actually incredibly easy. You basically make like a modified brownie batter and bake it. And what makes these molten is that you're not really fully baking them all the way through. You're baking them at a super hot temperature so that the outer layer sets and becomes kind of cakey, and then the center is still liquid. I have put a bit of a twist on it, not a big twist, but just sort of a slight sort of variation that I really like. And instead of using butter as the fat here, I'm using olive oil. I like olive oil. I love the flavor combination with chocolate. That's to me like a wonderful pairing. But I'm also doing it because it makes the batter slightly more fluid and you get an even more dramatic like molten effect when you spoon it into the cake. So it's twofold. It's for texture and for flavor.
Can you make it faster than the delivery can get it here?
I don't know if I could make it faster than Domino's could deliver, but I will say that you can make this recipe from start to finish and have a molten chocolate cake on your plate in 45 minutes. How does Domino's deliver it? How does it like sit in a car for that long? These cakes bake for 6 minutes. So if I were to have like some prep time where I could just have the batter done, I could definitely make it faster than Domino's can deliver.
Get a pizza too.
Oh, delivery is not available in your area. I'm secretly really relieved. They're basically the ingredients in a brownie batter. Different proportions, but very straightforward, mostly pantry items. I have semisweet chocolate, all-purpose flour, truly like the smallest amount of flour. Olive oil, as I said, I'm making an olive oil version of this rather than butter. I do have some room temperature unsalted butter just for greasing the molds, and I'll talk about why that's important. A little bit of extra flour for the molds. Then I have 3 whole eggs and 6 egg yolks, and some kosher salt and some sugar. Special equipment. The most important piece of equipment that you'll need is a mold. These are actually mini brioche molds. This is a 6-ounce ramekin. This works great. Another thing you can do, and I have instructions for how to modify the recipe in the book, is you can actually use a muffin tin. You'll make more cakes because they're a little bit smaller, but it works perfectly. I tried it at home. You get great results, so that's another option as well. But I'm gonna use these fluted metal molds because they look so pretty and they're just the perfect size. Other special equipment, you'll need a hand mixer, and that's to beat the eggs to get them super frothy, which is an important step. Other than that, you just need a couple bowls, and I have a saucepan with some water to help melt the chocolate. Okay, this is really important. The worst outcome, besides just overcooking them, is that they stick in the molds, because if they stick in the molds, you're not gonna be able to get them out, and then you might ruin that molten effect because you'll break the exterior. So I'm gonna use butter. Whenever I'm doing a baking recipe, I like to use the same fat in the recipe for the molds because it's just sort of like more streamlined. But in this case, I don't want to use oil for the mold because it doesn't sort of apply thick enough. And room temperature butter, you can get a really like generous coating on there, and that's going to make it super non-stick. So I have room temp butter. Make sure your molds are also really clean. That can lead to sticking if they're not clean. These are fluted, so I have quite a bit of surface area, and that means I want to be very thorough about prepping these. And when I bake these, they get filled all the way to the very top. So make sure that as you're greasing them, whether you're using the ramekin or the muffin tin, you're getting all the way to the very top. You know, you don't want to necessarily leave like big hunks of butter in, but I would say definitely err on the side of more rather than less. So now I'm going to take a little bit of flour. I'm going to sprinkle it into the mold, just a big pinch really. Tap it all around, and I want to now then rotate the mold so that it gets onto every buttered surface. And then tap out any excess. And now you see I have this like perfectly covered, really even. I don't have big pockets of flour anywhere, but there's a super even coating all around. That's what you want. So I did the one, I'm gonna do the rest, and then we'll move on to the batter. So all 8 of my molds are done, and this is a good time to mention that the recipe makes 8 cakes. That's kind of a lot. You could definitely cut the recipe in half and only make 4. 8 I think is great for entertaining, but just keep in mind that because you're like working with so many molds, when it's time to unmold them and take them out of the oven, you might want a couple sets of hands to help you get them out onto the plates really quickly. This first step is very much like the first step when you're making brownies. I'm just gonna melt the chocolate and the fat, in this case olive oil. Typically this recipe calls for butter, but I really like using olive oil here. And you want to use like a good quality extra virgin olive oil, but not one that's like so fancy or expensive that's just for drizzling. But something I think with good flavor, because you want that flavor to come through. That was 3/4 of a cup. So now I'm gonna get this over to my stove where I have a saucepan with a little bit of water in the bottom, and I'm gonna turn that on. So I'm gonna let that melt, and I want it to get completely smooth so that all of the chocolate is totally melted. And then I'm gonna bring it over here and we're gonna start to put together the batter, which starts by beating the eggs and sugar. The chocolate is melted, it's totally smooth. So I'm just gonna set this aside so it can cool a little bit. It's super fluid. You really get the aroma of olive oil, which I love. Now I have my hand mixer fitted with the beaters. I'm gonna take my whole eggs plus my yolks. I have them already combined in here. It's gonna go into a medium bowl. When I was developing this recipe, I couldn't quite decide how to think about it because these have a lot in common with like souffles. It's like a super eggy, very, very low flour, if any, kind of recipe. It's almost custardy, but it still is a cake. So this is in the cakes chapter, but the amount of flour that goes in is shocking. It's 2 tablespoons of flour in the entire recipe. So to the eggs, I'm gonna add the sugar. I think it's a 1/2 cup of sugar. It's not a lot of sugar. The sweetness is already coming from the semi-sweet chocolate, so it's just sweetening it a little bit. A teaspoon of kosher salt, diamond. If you're using Morton, cut it in half. It's a 1/2 teaspoon, like I always say. And I'm gonna beat this. This is really the key to this recipe, is I'm going to beat this mixture until it's super light and voluminous and moussey. It'll be about doubled in volume. So I'm gonna start it on low and increase the speed. You can see it's like super orange and liquid, and so this is gonna become pale and like really light and airy and kind of thick. It's become very airy and light. I use the term moussey, like it looks like mousse. That's kind of the best way to describe it. I know that I'm kind of at the point of doneness because the beaters leave like a very faint trail. It disappears quickly, but I can still see it. So now I'm gonna add my vanilla and my flour. It's 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then my flour. So 2 tablespoons flour, that's it. It's really just enough flour to like give a little bit of setting power, but really the structure of this recipe is coming from the eggs. Still gonna use my mixer. I am going to stream the eggs into the bowl with my melted chocolate and oil and just beat it on low. So I just really wanna combine. I don't really wanna like continue to whip it. So I'm gonna grab my bowl. So on low speed, what's gonna happen is the chocolate and the eggs are gonna emulsify, and I'm gonna get this actually relatively thick batter. Oops, just got egg all over my mixer. Just gonna scrape the rest of the egg in. So I just wanna mix this on low to combine everything. So now I have this fluid, evenly mixed batter. I am gonna scrape around the sides of the bowl a little bit. And that's the batter. It really did not take any time at all. A few minutes to melt the chocolate, a few minutes to beat the eggs, and that's how it all comes together. There's also a great do ahead in this recipe. Although you wanna be really time sensitive when it comes to baking, you can mix the batter ahead, fill the molds, chill them. They can be in the fridge for like 24 hours. And as long as you pull them out and let them reach room temperature before baking, you're good. So all this can be done ahead of time. I wouldn't chill them for more than 24 hours. Up until that point, you'll be fine. But again, you want to bake them from room temp because that's going to give you the best molten effect. So now I'm going to fill the molds. I have sort of this, do you guys watch Succession?
Yeah.
I have this ludicrously capacious bowl. And I'm going to fill the molds. You want to divide the batter evenly. It's going to reach almost to the very top, which is what you want. So I'm just getting this out of this huge bowl because it's going to be hard to portion. And I have it in now this 4-cup measure, which is just easier because it has a pour spout. I'm going to fill them. And it's going to be about a 1/2 cup of batter in each one. There's actually sort of an advantage to making them in the muffin tin because you can unmold them all at the same time by just inverting it onto like a cutting board. With these, you go one by one. I've said this many times that like I don't love chocolate flavor in combination with a lot of other flavors, but if it's nuts or caramel or peanut butter or sesame or olive oil, I really like it. You want them filled evenly so that they bake evenly, but it's not really like that. It's not that sensitive. I have a rack in the center. That's important because you want lots of air circulation all the way around all of the cakes. You know, generally I think there's a risk of over baking, but you could still underbake them. And I think how you would know if they're underbaked is if you touch the center and like you have batter that like comes off on your finger, then it's not done. You should leave it a little longer. But just know that like it'll be dry to the touch, but you'll feel underneath it still feels sort of liquid. That's the perfect level of doneness. Oh my God, I've made some smoke. So I'm gonna set the timer for 5 minutes and then I'll check them. I thought I got all the smoke out last night. I baked something last night and I didn't. It made smoke because Harris had cooked ribs in there and I think there had been some spillage.
I love my chocolate cake to taste like ribs.
Smoked chocolate, that's like a thing. People have smoked chocolate.
No, and ribs.
So now, time is of the essence. They're pulling away from the molds a little bit. They've puffed and they're matte except for the centers are still kind of shiny, but when I press on it, you can almost see like right below the surface is liquid. Make sure you have something to protect your hand because they're actually quite hot. So you're gonna take the mold, invert a plate, invert them together, and then pull off the mold. Look at how cute. So I'm just gonna spoon in. Ooh, but I love that there's like distinct like cake texture. This to me is like such a good dessert. I told people to make this for Valentine's Day. It's like warm, it's romantic, it's kind of dramatic. It's just really good. The cake part on the outside is so light, and I love that contrast between like incredibly light cake and molten, very rich center. I would definitely like want a glass of milk with it, or you can serve it with a little unsweetened whipped cream or a little ice cream, but to me it's not like an overwhelming chocolate dessert. So good, so easy. In my mind, like this is not even that much more difficult than making brownies, and so impressive and dramatic. It's like, that's why I feel like it's like a secret. It's like, you guys, these are actually really easy to make, and it's gonna make you look like a professional pastry chef. You guys, did you have it? Did it fall over?
What are you talking about?
Did you have it on the seat? And did you like take a sharp right turn or something? As far as the size, it's very similar. Kind of smells the way, remember Cocoa Puff cereal?
Yeah.
Kind of smells like Cocoa Puff cereal, which I probably haven't smelled in 30 years. The crunch probably helps them in transport, makes them less delicate. Although we had some issues. In like the real version, the homemade version, you can't like take this to go. It's still warm. Honestly, that's not bad. Like it's not running out, but it's definitely a molten center. It's not that bad. I actually think it has very good texture. I wish it were more chocolatey. I just give major props to Domino's for doing like lava cakes delivery. That takes guts. So thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I feel like my future, I just like as a feeling I have, I think I'm gonna get really into pizza.
Cut.
Get your cameras out.